Dopamine here. So I've spent countless hours on the new MSI Claw 8 AI Plus. It's a crazy name, but I've had it for a month now, and there's some special things this handheld has to offer that other handhelds like the Ally X, Legion Go, and Steamdeck, they're kind of missing out on, not gonna lie. So I'll show you real world performance. I'll show you what the AI part of the Claw means with Intel, and I'm just gonna show you the reality of having this device. This is a handheld focused channel, so you don't have to sub if you don't want to, but please tell me, what can I do to improve these videos? Okay, so let's start off with something that I find to be so important. It's such a big deal with this handheld, and that is the fact that this handheld is extremely cozy. And what I mean by cozy is that, okay, there's a few things like the size, right? Here's a Legion Go, right? If I put them together, they're roughly the same size. The difference between the Legion Go and the Claw is that the Legion Go has 3 pieces turned into one. This handheld, the Claw, is just a freaking unit, and it's extremely comfortable to hold. The craziest part about this thing is like, I will sink hours into Hitman or Witcher 3. Literally hours will go by, and I don't feel like I've been gaming for too long. It's crazy, which is a good thing. Maybe it's actually a bad thing. I don't know. And nothing about this handheld is threatening. Some of you might know what that means, some might not. But like, there's a huge peace of mind with this thing. It's such a full experience, head to toe. You've got insane audio, and the speakers literally like wrap around your ears. There's low frequency, so if you shoot a gun, you feel that thump. Like, there is bass in these speakers. And so what I'm trying to say is that like, you'll play on this handheld and you won't start any wishful thinking. You won't wish that you had more than what you currently have in your hands, except for maybe an OLED, but you do have an insane 16:10 screen that is so immersive. You can get lost in your games, and it's got a variable refresh rate, so games run so freaking smooth. Here's Hitman, you got like 70 frames per second. To me, it feels like I'm playing at like 110 frames per second. Games run smooth. And then the last thing I'll say about the cozy part is the battery, right? This battery is insane. I'll show you its potential here in a bit, but I think the biggest thing to break immersion or break focus on a game is stress, right? There's just like no stress on this handheld. It sounds weird, but it's true. I would never take money from a company where I review a product, okay? None of this is paid. This is my real, authentic, what it's like. But there's a catch. So what is it like to play games on this thing? Take into account, like the video after this, I'm comparing the Claw's performance versus the Ally X, and then the new AMD HX 370 chip, which is technically on paper somewhat of the same as the Z2 Extreme. There's going to be little minor core differences, but all in all, it's going to be the same thing. I'll tell you this straight up. It is freaking stable. Games run consistently smooth. I am seeing performance numbers that are so good to have on a handheld. It's such a breath of fresh air. And I don't see a lot of fluctuation in performance. And Hitman, I'll be around like 70 frames per second on ultra settings, with RTX off, of course. Cyberpunk, you know, very high settings at like 40 FPS right now. Red Dead, that's another one I've been ripping hours on. And that's like a good solid 50 at like 17 watts. But here's the catch. It ain't all sunshine and rainbows. And okay, ready? All right, so Stalker 2. I play this on my Ally X, my F1 Pro all the time. I get a good consistent like 60 frames per second because I've got frame gen, fluid motions, and I use AMD Adrenalin to its full advantage to get the games to run perfectly. But with this handheld, with the Claw, we're working with Intel here, right? We've got this new Intel chip, and here's what I've noticed. Game developers have not spent a lot of time and money into optimizing their games for Intel-based graphics cards and chips, okay? So Intel has XeSS, that's basically AMD's FSR, right? But Stalker 2 doesn't have frame gen on the Claw, so I can't play the game. I'm playing at like 20 frames per second, I'm out. There's a few games where some of those features that you may be used to if you have an AMD card or even like an RTX graphics card, A lot of those features don't work on this handheld as of now. Another one would be Indiana Jones. I can use frame gen and fluid motion on Indiana Jones with any other handheld just fine. But with this handheld, I'm stuck at the raw performance. I'll use FSR3 on some games. You can use it with an Intel chip, but frame gen and all those cool little features that you have in Adrenaline, they're not here. And so that's something that I really want people to understand here. All the attention's on AMD right now and NVIDIA, right? Not a lot of attention's on Intel. But here's where it flips. Intel is working really hard to enter into the gaming space again with their new Battle Mage graphics card. They've got, these custom these APUs, things like that. So you might see a pickup over time, but it's not going to happen overnight. And so for me, there's a way to halt all this problem, right? And that is just to install lossless scaling. I might make a full video on that later, but lossless scaling will give you all the frame gen that you need, all the upscaling that you need without having to use AMD, Intel, or NVIDIA. It's just its own thing, which is so cool for this Claw. Another thing I want to mention is battery. So like I mentioned, the battery is really good. But this is what's freaking crazy about this Intel chip. This is Red Dead Redemption 2 at 8 watts. Okay, 8 watts is crazy low. I would never play it like this, but I'm getting like 30 frames per second. I'm just touching right close to it. That is insane. You are conserving so much energy, but giving out so much performance that you really don't have to stress about battery. And that's such a big deal. Another thing that makes this handheld so freaking cozy is this AI mode. I feel like this is the only AI thing that this Claw really has, but it is convenient. What this does, when I turn this on, it automatically configures the TDP for the game that I'm playing. So that means that you don't have to constantly switch between silent mode, performance mode, turbo mode, depending on the game that you play or when you're not playing on a game. Like, it'll just do that for you. So all you have to do is turn your device on, turn on the game, and boom, you're fine. Like, no settings, no adjusting settings required. Just play your freaking game. And that is such a cool, convenient, big deal because you don't want to spend time configuring things. You just want to spend time playing games. In my experience, and I'll do a battery test in my next video, don't worry. In my experience, it's like, I get a good 2 hours and 50 minutes, 3 hours and 20 minutes of battery life on Hitman. I know that for sure. Kingdom Come Deliverance, the first one, is literally 3 hours. I mean, that's good. Anything past that is just a cherry on top. The next thing I want to talk about is cooling. So this is the dual fans. These fans are so quiet. You can play in the middle of the night while your girl's going to sleep. And the fans aren't blowing like a freaking F-35 jet. They're just quiet. They're stealthy. And so it's not interruptive when you're playing a game at 30 watts. You can hear the fans, don't get me wrong. But it's so smooth. It's quiet, it's chill, and it's just the handheld doesn't ever get hot. It feels like it's okay to play this at 30 watts. It's just relieving, it's good. And then I want to show you the software. So MSI has their MSI CENTER right here, as you can see, and I like it. It's simple, it does the job. It's not crazy up in your grill like Legion Space. But if I go into you can change your scenario, right? So AI engine, endurance, manual, 8, 17, 30 watts. I can change my control mode, updates in the middle, settings. There's really not much. It's very simple. It gets the job done. I actually like how simple it is. It works. Every time you press this button right here, it pulls up. On the right side, if you press this one though, this is your little overlay to configure settings. And as you can see here, it syncs. It works hand in hand with Xbox Game Bar. So if you use that a lot, then you're in freaking luck. But I personally don't use that much unless I'm hopping online with friends, But yeah, I know it's sick. You can add little widgets and whatnot, and it's convenient. It's cool. But the big question is, I've now played with all the main handhelds. I have all the main handhelds that you could buy, right? Here in the US at least. Sorry, British. I'm sorry, guys, all the foreigners, but what, is this the right one? Would this be my go-to? Is this something that you would not regret buying? And to be honest, Intel stepped up. I think this is an incredible device all around. For me though, like I love OLED. This doesn't have an OLED screen. Just know though, you're not gonna get AMD Adrenalin. And if you've played with AMD Adrenalin, you'll know it's pretty useful. But aside from that, like the raw power on this handheld is insane. This Intel chip is performing, and you can tell that MSI spent a lot of time making this handheld good. I mean, if you take a look at the body real quick, here's a cool little thing I've noticed. There's a lot of attention to detail on this handheld. Like look at the top right here. This is so cool, these little dots. You know, if it's nighttime, I'm playing in bed, and I'm like trying to find where to plug in the USB-C, boom, you can feel it. Like a blind man would feel a message or whatever. And I went over to, I was at CES and I met some of the guys that, you know, I hung out with some of the dudes that made this. And I'm like, guys, the fact that you put these little dots on the claw, I said that to them, they're like, you noticed? They like freaked out. I'm like, yeah, I noticed.